I'm so glad that you joined us here today to discuss the best-selling book of all time, the Bible. Now, on behalf of my illustrious colleagues here, we hope that our presentation today will enlighten you a little bit on the writers of the Bible and how this book came to be. So I'll start us off, because clearly I'm the most important one. I spoke first. So, I am the real writer of the Bible. That's right. I wrote the whole thing from beginning to end. One sole writer, just me. Who am I? God. That's right. I'm so glad some of you know. You need to help some of these others because they didn't seem so sure. So God, I am the writer of the Bible, right? No, come on, now it's ridiculous. You know that I'm not God, right? I mean, that would be just totally silly. No, I'm not God, I'm Moses. Because that's totally making sense, yes. I am Moses. I wrote the first 5 books of the Bible. Anyone know what that's called? First 5 books. Some call it the Torah, some call it the Pentateuch. I wrote the first 5 books of the Bible. Now, we call this part of the Bible the Hebrew Bible, but some people call it the Old Testament, and that's really not a fair word. So we're going to call it the Hebrew Scriptures going forward. And because I wrote it...
excuse me, not so fast, Moses. Well, let me set the record straight. While for many years it was said that you wrote the Pentateuch, the mainstream consensus is that there were 4 of us who actually wrote it. I was the earliest, around 950 BC, and I'm called the J writer. I wrote the beginnings of the Bible, and I refer to God using the Hebrew characters for Yahweh and Jehovah. You know, J for Jehovah, not Julie, Jehovah. My God interacts with humans and is very human-like. He gets pretty angry at times. You know, God, smash!
You may have been the first writer, Jay, but I wrote news stories that I felt really needed telling. Someone had to clarify what you wrote, so I wrote it better. Around 100 years later, I came along, and I'm known as the E-writer. Not E for excellent, although I am, but E for how I refer to God, Elohim. I sometimes wrote from a different perspective than my good friend Jay. My God is more distant from humans than her God. My emphasis was on humans fearing God's judgment, his holy wrath.
I still think my version of God was better.
I should mention, by the way, that none of the writers at that time are actually thought to be a single writer. Well, we like to claim sole credit, as we are attention hogs. With so few literate people, though, it would take a group of writers a long time to record things. So a group of writers did the work for each one of us. Sort of like a staff of sitcom writers.
Wait, E, did you just call us sitcom writers? You compared us to sitcom writers? Jeez. Well, hello. I am one that they call the P writer because I was a priest. Or I had priestly perspective. Get it? P, priestly? Come on, people, work with me here. I came along another 200 years later. My God wasn't quite as angry as the others. I was more concerned about explaining the moral and ethical way of life. As a good priest, I made sure that the genealogies and details were recorded.
Now, wait a minute, P. You're telling them that you came next. Well, some scholars say that I actually came next. And I'm what they call the D-writer. See, I'm D-writer, right? It actually stands for Deuteronomy, but I'm D-writer. So to this day, scholars are still debating if P or D came first. Whatever the order, I wrote all about the personal responsibility, the laws, the rules, and regulations. I assert that the only sanctuary of God is the temple in Jerusalem.
So J, E, P, and D. There you have it. I stand corrected. Even God makes a mistake now and then. I had some help by these lovely folks writing down my divine ideas. Now, this book, the Hebrew Scriptures, does not end here. We've just covered the first 5 books, and has your mind already been blown? Well, now imagine there are 30 more plus books to cover, and they all have writers or schools of writers. And this stage is not big enough for all of that. So we're just going to skip that part, and you're going to have to go home and do a little research on that part. And on top of JEPND, for the first part of the Bible, there was someone called the redactor, or a school of redactors, who went along and fixed, bit by little bit, everything that these folks wrote. I mean, you weren't all perfect, just so you know. You did your best, but the redactor came along. And that man helped fix everything up here, and yes, it was a man. Basically, all of the writers were men. Now that may seem strange or even disturbing to us today, but that is the times that they lived in. There were few literate people, and those that were most likely men. So, we understand the time and the context when the book was written. And that's just the first part. Are you ready for the second part? So we're going to now jump ahead, and let's hear from the new guys on the block who wrote the second half. These ones much younger, only 2,000 years old.
Good day, I'm Matthew, and my gospel is the first in the New Testament, which means I was the first writer.
Stop misleading these people. Come on, you weren't the first writer. And we don't call it the New Testament. That sounds like one is better than the other. We call ourselves the Christian Bible. Get with the times.
So picky. Fine, Christian Bible. But I was still first. How dare you say I came after you? I was clearly first.
First schmirst. Your book appears first, but you very well know that I wrote before you.
Trifles, all right, Ms. First.
I am Mark, and I wrote closest to the life of Jesus. Well, still 40 or 50 years after he died. It started with an oral tradition, passed on stories that kept Jesus alive for us. I heard this story from my third cousin's girlfriend's Uncle Barber, who knew a guy who followed Jesus. And one of them may have actually met Jesus, or not. Now, when I say I wrote the gospel, I don't actually mean me. Nobody really knows exactly who wrote any of them. During my time, it was common to write on behalf of someone revered. Mainstream scholars believe none of us were disciples, but their names were put on the books to add legitimacy, a very common practice at the time. No matter who I really am, I wrote to convey Jesus' important message of unconditional love.
Okay, are you happy now, Ms. First? Yes, I, Matthew, wrote after my friend here, 20 or so years later, which makes me younger. And since you've blown our cover, all right, I admit I'm not the disciple Matthew. That name was added to my writings by later church followers to strengthen the apostolic line. I use Ms. First here as a source, sure, along with something called the Q source. But Mark left some good stuff out, like the genealogy of Jesus, the Magi, the Beatitudes, and the Great Commission from the resurrected Jesus. This is important stuff, and since I included it, I feel my gospel is best.
Whatever.
But you didn't tell the whole story, Matthew. Hello, I am Luke, the third writer of what they call the Synoptic Gospels. Because the three of us are similar, and that was, but it's not plagiarism. No. Think of it as more like Wikipedia. We just added a little bit more to what we know. What makes me important is that I also wrote some good history. The Acts of the Apostles. Is it real history? Well, we didn't write histories in the way you write them today. So it's bad, but it's the best I could do. And don't be too tough on me. Again, understanding the time in which I wrote is important.
Yeah, but Luke, you storytellers left out the essence of Jesus. Hello, good people, I am John, the writer of the last gospel. Now, some call me John the Apostle, but we've covered that already, and I really wasn't. The Jesus I portrayed, many call the cosmic Jesus. I wrote more theologically and more poetically. Just read my opening lines. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And he was the beginning with God. Good stuff, huh?
Good stuff. Good stuff. And I join you, John, in saying that not everybody got the right story about Jesus, but I feel that I did. I am Paul. That's right. I am the writer of much of the rest of the Christian scriptures. I am Paul, the evangelist who brought the church to a greater glory. My epistles, or my letters, helped spread the good news throughout the Roman Empire. And I am actually the first writer. Nanny, nanny, boo, boo. I am the first writer. My letters came about 20 years after Jesus lived. Now, did I meet Jesus? Yes, on the road to Damascus. Did I know him before his resurrection? No. Many people get that confused, but even though I came later in the story, I feel like I knew him best of anybody. Now, why are my letters so important? Why did they make it into this Bible along with things like the Gospels? Well, it's because I fleshed out the theology and the teaching so that the people could use it. I gave structure to our great church. And, excuse my ego, but many in Christianity say that this is more the religion of Paul than it is of Jesus. Because I'm the one who helped form the churches. Now, calm down. I didn't say that. I'm just saying other people said that. Now, after my letters, there are a few other books, most notably a book called Revelation. Now, a lot of people think that they know what this book means, but the first clue that you have that they don't know what they're talking about is if they call it Revelations. There is no S on the end of that, so that's how you know you've got an imposter in front of you. So the book of Revelation was really about Rome. It contains a whole bunch of symbology because they had to speak kind of in secret code. And so really it was about how they could survive and keep their religion alive even though they were persecuted. And so this ends our story. From Genesis all the way to Revelation, there you have it. 4 writers, just representing 4 of the Old Testament, 4 of the New Testament, and we thank you for reading our books. What a cast. This is just the first of 4 that we're going to do on the Bible. We're digging in for the next 3 weeks. We're going to cover some of the difficult parts of the Bible, you know, the ones that make you a little uncomfortable. And we are covering the best-selling book of all time. So whether it's your favorite or not, here it is in front of us. Now, how many of you are huge Bible fans? You love it. How many of you, okay, how many of you are Bible fans? Maybe not huge, but you like the book. Get those hands up. Be proud. Okay, and how many of you, it's okay, you're in the middle. It's part of your pride, okay. And how many of you, not really a fan, don't use it much. And, okay, a couple, that's fine, all right. So, no matter where you are, there's something for you today and in the next 4 weeks. I think that discovering what you really feel about the book is what's most important. When I went to seminary, this is where I was. I was totally in the not a fan camp. I was over here. I would never need to pick it up off the shelf again. I probably would have been okay. But guess what? In seminary, that is not okay. They expect you to pick that thing up and actually read a little bit of it. So I was sort of forced to do that. Growing up Catholic, we didn't really read it. How many Catholics actually read the Bible? Not many didn't read it. I'm not sure we had one. Maybe we did. So for the first time, I was reading it directly. I wasn't just taking the word of somebody else who told me something or reading what someone wrote. And that's when I was able to find that there are these things called commentaries, and there are things called footnotes, and there's introductions to the books, so that I started to understand it more. And then I was able to work with it better. And if I decided not to use part of it, or I decided that I had a judgment about part of it, it was at least an informed opinion. And so Paul Allen Laughlin is an author, a Unity author, who wrote a fantastic book that we will have in the bookstore next week. We don't have it this week, but come back next week. And the title of his book is Remedial Christianity. So, some of us need to start back at the beginning, and I learned so much from reading his book. And here are a couple of things that he shares for people like us that are on this journey, and some of us are comfortable with some of this Christianity and the Bible, and some of us would not call ourselves part of that camp. He says, the most important thing to know about the Bible, which you probably do not, is how excitingly diverse and inexhaustibly rich a resource it really is. There is a lot going on in this book. So there is everything from poems to letters on how to conduct yourself, to poetry, to sensual writing. There is all sorts of literature to be found in this book. And then he says that the vast majority of people simply don't know nearly as much as they should about their professed religion. Ooh, busted. Ever ask somebody what they really believe? I had a friend, Martha Creek, who tells this story that she got into a conversation with someone who was, I believe, Baptist. And this Baptist said, what do you believe? And Martha kind of said, well, tell me what you believe. And she said, well, I'm a Baptist. And she said, okay, that's great. What do you believe about that? Well, I'm a Baptist. I know that. I'd like to understand what belief. I'm a Baptist. So there's no, maybe there was or there wasn't, but it wasn't about the teaching. It wasn't about understanding. It was just a label that we knew. And sometimes it even happens in unity. I know there are unity people that sometimes say things and I think, have you been around? Do you know what we really believe about the goodness of people and the goodness of God? And so Paul Allen Laughlin encourages us to overcome what he calls religious illiteracy. If we really understood the teachings in the Bible, would we be different? And so it's up to us to become literate. And then he says, the Bible is not a flawless vessel. Oops, right there, what a heretic. It is not a flawless vessel to contain God, but a window that provides glimpses of divinity despite its surface imperfections. I like that definition. It acknowledges the stuff that is troubling. It acknowledges that there are stories that conflict within the Bible, and yet it gives us a glimpse and a window to look through into the divinity. If we choose. And again, I'm never saying that it has to be something you turn to regularly, but it may be, and you may find some gifts in it. Because it is a complicated book. Actually, how many books is it? Anyone know? 66. 66. And were there 66 authors? No, there was probably 3, 4, 5 times. Who knows how many times? So 66. Now just picture that. Picture like Stephen King is there, and you got Joyce Carol Oates. Imagine how many authors today, if you took 66 of them, to try to get one book, how it would come together. It would be 66 individual books. And there is a through thread, of course. We're talking about God and how we're trying to live. But imagine those 66 people are up here with me, and then now imagine that their books have to be copied, right? Because there's no printing press. So here's my copy, but I want to get it out. So I'm going to hand it out to a few of you here, and would you all start copying it for me? And because you are illiterate, you don't know how to write. You are just copying letters. You might make a few mistakes. You might make some changes. If you do know how to read, you may help me and improve my writing. And then that's not enough. Now we need more copies later on and later on. So by now we've got this room filled with people. And then we say, now let's translate. Oh, now we got to get a whole bunch more other people. So by the time we're done, this entire building is probably filled with people that had an impact on what you look at today. That's big. And so I go back to when I read it myself, what jumps out for me? Do I find anything of value in here? And when I read something like the 23rd Psalm, yeah, I feel something in those words. There's a power in reading, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me. That comforts my new thought soul just as much as it comforts someone else's soul. There's poetry in there, and I hear someone who walked a hard road, and I've walked that hard road sometimes. And I feel like 2,000 years later, 3,000 years later, they're talking to me. They wrote that down, and it benefits me. And then there are those parts that I'm not so fond of that we'll talk about next week, that I kind of set aside. So there is both wonderful and challenging stuff. And my invitation to you over the next 4 weeks especially is to pull out your Bible wherever it is and get the dust off, cobwebs, some spiders may come out. Get that book out wherever it is, or go online and look at it yourself. Just open it up, pick something, and see what jumps out at you. And it will inform you whether it makes your heart sing or it makes your heart sink. Find out what the Bible means to you directly, and come back and tell me next week. Namaste. And so now we have the time for our love offering here in this service. We're so grateful to all of you who give into your spiritual community, which feeds you spiritually. And thank you for being part of this prosperity cycle, that as we give, we receive. Know that you are blessing us. We are blessed by this, and we send the blessings back to you. I will say line and have you repeat after me. Divine love through me.
Divine love through me.
Blesses and multiplies.
Blesses and multiplies.
All that I have.
All that I have.
All that I give.
All that I give.
And all that I receive.
And all that I receive.
Thank you, God.
To have a Beatles song sung to me, those lyrics, oh my gosh, I can't thank you enough. It is so wonderful to be known. To be known. And thank you, Rebbe. We were both raised Catholic. There's a mystery, there's a coincidence. I think not. I think Unity is full of Catholics, or recovering Catholics, as we like to say. And I think the Catholic Bible listed Paul as an apostle. I think, yeah, they said, yeah, that's right. Yeah, interesting. So, oh my gosh, 9 years flew by. I'm so grateful. So I would like to do this for Doug, and I'd like to do this for Rev E. I think you are such a blessing to this church, our new minister, and a whole new, much more theatrical experience, which I love. You're going to come to a service and see some theater. Yay! And to my dear friend Tatiana, who has been such a wonderful accompanist and cohort in crime these 9 years. And for all of you, this was and will remain wonderful. This is what I know about all of you.
With the choice each new day brings, and with every breath you take, bless the progress that you make. The reason you live is found in every gift you give. Love your life, love your dreams, you will do amazing things. let your mind rest for a little while. Sometimes deepest answers come when you're out there having fun. So close your eyes and take a breath and smile. Amazing, amazing, you will do amazing things. Amazing, you're here to do amazing things. Amazing. Thank you.
I am open to receive in this time of meditation. I let all the concerns of the day fade into the background. And I am fully present in this moment, in this place. I feel the love in this room, and I feel the love in my heart extend out. This perfect experience of giving and receiving. And I notice the body sitting tall, the back slightly away from the chair, shoulders relaxed. My hands gently rest. My feet are grounded. And the breath happens. It comes in naturally and it leaves on its own. I let this breath be a reminder that this is how life can be for me. Easily coming and going. Releasing, pushing, and striving and working. And moving into a place of allowing. Now allow the blessings of the silence to move through me and heal me and uplift me. No effort, just silence. And as I continue this perfect breathing, I let it be a reminder in all situations that I can let go and allow life to flow before taking any action. I take a moment simply to be, to know notice and accept. And then I bring love into all situations. Love. Let it flow everywhere. And so it is. And so now we have the time for our love offering here in this service. We're so grateful to all of you who give into your spiritual community, which feeds you spiritually. And thank you for being part of this prosperity cycle, that as we give, we receive. Know that you are blessing us. We are blessed by this, and we send the blessings back to you. I will say line and have you repeat after me. Divine love through me.
Divine love through me.
Blesses and multiplies.
Blesses and multiplies.
All that I have.
All that I have.
All that I give.
All that I give.
And all that I receive.
And all that I receive.
Thank you, God.
To have a Beatles song sung to me, those lyrics, oh my gosh, I can't thank you enough.
It is so wonderful to be known. To be known. And thank you, Rebbe. We were both raised Catholic. There's a mystery. There's a coincidence. I think not. I think Unity is full of Catholics, or recovering Catholics, as we like to say. And I think the Catholic Bible listed Paul as an apostle. I think, yeah, they said, yeah, that's right. Yeah, interesting. So,
Oh my gosh, 9 years flew by. I'm so grateful. So I would like to do this for Doug, and I'd like to do this for Rev E. I think you are such a blessing to this church, our new minister, and a whole new, much more theatrical experience, which I love. You're going to come to a service and see some theater. Yay! And to my dear friend Tatiana, who has been such a wonderful accompanist and cohort in crime these 9 years. And for all of you, this was and will remain wonderful. This is what I know about all of you.
you will do amazing things with the choice each new day brings. And with every breath you take, bless the progress that you make. The reason